real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today we are going to be talking about leadership in policing, which is always a difficult job, however, especially challenging over the past few years. For that, I have William Fraass on the show. William served 27 years with the Sausalito Police Department out of California, rising from a 19-year-old reserve officer to captain. His last assignment was as the acting chief of police before suffering an injury that led to his retirement. He is a graduate of the 269th session of the FBI's National Academy and holds a master's degree in criminal justice with dual specializations in law enforcement management and homeland security and terrorism. William is also the author of Law Enforcement Leadership, 10 Key Traits and What Law Enforcement Agencies Can Do to Develop These in Future Leaders. And now he is the managing consultant of Code 33 Consulting, a law enforcement public safety consulting firm. So welcome, William.
Thank you very much for having me on. It is a pleasure to talk to you.
Hey, I'm glad we could get you in here. Leadership in policing is a big topic. You get all kinds of flavors and styles in there, and it's definitely been a difficult job over the past few years. So, I'm happy we could get you in here, and I really appreciate a lot of the content that you put out. Some very thoughtful pieces, and I think you bring a very critical eye to some of the more, we'll say, topical things out there. So, and I'll get descriptions up, or in the episode description, I'll put up links to some of the stuff that you put out there. So, I'm glad to have you in here. And just to kind of start, let's talk a little bit about you. So, going back to the beginning, can you tell people a little more depth on your background, kind of where you come from, and what put you on the trajectory into talking about leadership today?
Well, nothing special about my background or anything heroic or wonderful. I was actually born in San Francisco, but grew up and was raised in the suburb of Novato, which is just 30 minutes north of San Francisco. It is a city that was primarily at one time mostly San Francisco police, and numerous other law enforcement and fire department personnel lived there. A lot of it was San Francisco PD, a lot of it was San Francisco Fire, and then other municipalities. My first memories are actually the day of my brother being born while I was not even 3 years old yet. And I went to my grandmother's house, and we had the TV show Barney Miller on the TV. And that was about a New York Police Department and a detective squad. And I still remember it to this day. My dad was a law enforcement officer. He went from cadet to chief of police, and he exposed me to a lot of what law enforcement was, just doing daily conversations. He never pushed me into the profession. He never demanded I go into it. He never overly glorified it, nor did he speak when he was critical, when it was necessary of it. But through his actions, he showed me what a wonderful, diverse job law enforcement is. He went from policing a very wealthy agency to also being involved and being deployed and going down to help during the Watts riots in 1965 and spending 2 weeks dealing with that and the aftermath.
Okay.
So he had a lot of different law enforcement perspectives. I had an uncle who was a sergeant. And talking to him about the job also got me interested in it. But also just growing up in a family and in a community that was very pro law enforcement. And then also seeing what was going on and hearing the stories and learning that law enforcement is a force for good. There's a lot of stuff that happens. So that a lot of things that will expose you to the good side and the bad side. Because I saw the bad side of law enforcement. I saw cops that drank too much. I saw cops that made bad decisions. I saw cops who got fired, and deservingly so. I saw cops that got railroaded and who should not have been punished or fired that did.
Yeah.
But That's just the nature of the beast. But I was exposed to that as a young age. So when I decided to get into the job, well, I was I went to community college for a year and a half. I enjoyed it, but I wanted to do something more, and it was beginning to bore me. So I decided to get into the profession and joined up and became a reserve officer when I was 19 and had my eyes open very wide at a very early age.
When you're a reserve officer, so are you out on the street with the police, or what's the job entail?
Every agency in every state does reserve officers a little bit different. When for me, I had when I was on duty, I was a sworn peace officer. I carried a firearm, and I was proactively patrolled with off. I had a partner, so we were a two-man car,
Hmm.
and that is so I was never somebody who patrolled all by myself, but I had a partner, and that was great because I was learning from their experiences and everything.
Yeah. So when you're a reserve officer, how long before you jump to, is it like, I don't know what's called, full status police officer? Like at what point do you do that?
We always said fully sworn
Fully
or
sworn.
full time.
Okay.
I did that for a year and a half. I While I was going back to school, I decided I'll do that. I'll go back to school because what most people won't hire you full time until you're 21.
Hmm.
But I did that for off and on for a year and a half, and then I went back to the police academy, and then went full time when I was 21 years old.
I find that actually kind of interesting now that you mention it. So can you buy a firearm under 21 in the US? Like what are the rules there? Because then you get to carry one, but
Yes.
can't get sworn in until you're 21?
Well, in California at the time, and there've been so many different changes. In
Yeah.
California, when I came on, in order to be a law enforcement officer, you had to not be a felon, be over 18 years of age, and
Okay.
be a high school graduate. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so and I got my first firearm actually through the police department. They issued me a firearm,
Hmm.
and that was the one I carried on duty. So while I was on duty, I was able to. My reserve level status didn't allow me to carry a firearm where I was off duty.
Oh, okay. I
Um,
see.
that that's, but yeah, no. I mean, there's always there are many when you become a law enforcement officer. There are many exemptions that sometimes come into play that allow people that were under 21 to carry firearms.
So in your early days and you're seeing all this stuff about policing, at what point did leadership become more of a meaningful consideration for you? So, when do you start to kind of notice these things and think, this is an important factor. This is something that I want to talk about or get more into or research, whatever it might be. Uh, did you have kind of was there like a flashpoint of that? And you're like, wow, this is something I really need to focus on? Or is it just developed over time?
Combination of both. It mostly developed slowly over time, but there were flashpoints that occurred throughout that time. One of the things was I never realized how beneficial it was to be the son of a police chief and learning from their experiences and hearing their stories and seeing that example of leadership until I became a cop and I started seeing things occur, especially as I was working my way up to becoming an older cop and getting more experiences and more responsibility. Then I realized how important leadership was, because I always thought that, you know what, my philosophy was always every cop is a leader. There's different levels of leadership,
Hmm.
and I saw that. And yes, my adapted over the years that says every person, any police officer in any rank could be a leader. However, there are going to be good leaders and bad leaders. And what got me really interested in leadership for law enforcement was I worked for some horrible leaders. I mean,
Yeah.
horrific, corrupt, bad decision making, double standard, some sexual harassment, you name it.
Hmm.
There was just a little, and that wasn't just my agency; it was other agencies I saw. And I remember I was talking to a dear friend of mine who was a captain in another who retired as a captain at a fellow agency, but at the time he was he was a sergeant at the time, and he remembered he said, "Bill, the reason why I promoted is I looked at people and said I will never work for that individual."
Yeah.
And then I took a look at my agency and I saw some people that were a little bit higher in rank than me, or they were at the same level as me, but we had just different philosophies. And I didn't like their style. I didn't like how they did the job. And I said that same thing. I will not work for that person. So that's what pushed me.
Okay.
Um, and then when I saw that I loved the job and I never got into the job to become a supervisor, never got into the job to want to climb the ranks. I got into the job to do the best I could be and see where it took me. And then as I realized that I could possibly move forward and have a greater impact in different positions, I started studying the profession. And I ran across that there were not a whole lot of good books or good information about law enforcement leadership.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff about management.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff about how you supervise and all things like that. But there wasn't anything that was good about, hey, let's talk about pure leadership. And so I started reading a lot of police autobiographies. I started studying the profession and then also taking a critical look at my agency and the profession itself. And that forced me into going, we have some leadership issues. We have some great leadership. We have some poor leadership. What can we do to help leadership get further? So I studied it. And I always like to say, all my leadership lessons doesn't come because I'm so smart or I'm so great of a leader or I've done so much or my department's done so much. My leadership lessons come because I had failed at something. I messed something up. My department did
Yeah.
something wrong. That is where it comes from. By no means do I ever say I am such a wonderful leader. I'm not. I've made as many mistakes as the next person, but I've learned that you have to lead through character and through principle, and you have to lead through concern. And if you do that, you'll be successful. You're not going to always be perfect, but you're going to develop people better and you're going to be better. So that's kind of where my leadership philosophies came from.
Well, you know what? And kind of on your last point there, I don't think anybody expects of leadership for them to be perfect because everyone's human at the end of the day. Where it comes down to the good leadership versus bad, and how your subordinates might see you is, if you make a mistake as a leader and you've been a good leader and your subordinates support you, they're willing to give you some grace, understanding when you do make an error or something bad happens, right? It's more of a team effort. Hey, we can work on this, we can fix this. If you're a bad leader, you'll know very quick when nobody comes to your rescue. So,
Exactly. If you're not building those teams, if you're not listening to other people, they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. If you're being
yes,
selfish, if you're not and you're not practicing selfless leadership, then people are going to say they're in it for themselves. And when those missteps and those problems arise, number one, they're not going to help you out. They're going to just watch you fail. Number two is that they're going to go, you see, I always told you this person was bad, and now it's demonstrating it.
yeah, and I always like this conversation about where the leadership comes from. Is that more some people? Is it like more born into them? Is it more a cultural thing? And then family has impact and how you grow up. But then you also see some people that get out of jail. They've been in jail. They could have done really bad stuff, and they get out, a decade later. But then they turn that around and they go, okay, here's all the things I did, and now I'm trying to reform. I'm trying to educate people. So you see like a different leadership style, but that's more born out of experience, I guess. One of the things I do want to talk about is management versus leadership. So earlier on in your point, you had said that there's good leaders and bad leaders. Sometimes I kind of just call it, there's leadership. Well, there's everyone's a manager, but some exhibit leadership. So I kind of separate the two. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that. So when people get into these ranks in management, you see a lot of there can be a lot of self-servingness. A lot of ego can come into play, a lot of CYA, and I'm just trying to get through the day without critique and criticism. Don't give me paperwork. But then you see some of those leadership elements where people are willing to kind of be the shit umbrella for their people. And it's like, as long as you're doing the right things for the right reasons, I'm here to help you out and we can figure some things out together. So you said that you had some bad experiences. Can you talk a little bit about some of those experiences you had with seeing bad management, or maybe you yourself had somebody kind of did something to you that you're like, okay, I don't want to be like that person. So any of those kind of experiences come to mind?
I once worked for a chief who could not make a decision to save their life.
Mhm.
And also, before they tried to do any decision, they would say, "I need a defendable position. I won't decide on this until I could justify every little bit of every decision I make." Well, that's impossible. You can't justify every little thing. Sometimes you just got to go with your gut. Um, it's when I saw leaders who were trying to get ahead by talking bad about their bosses or talking bad about their subordinates, that made me kind of realize, hey, what is this person all about? I I remember once I was driving a patrol car, and there had been damage on this patrol car for months. I mean, there was literally dust in the scratches. And a sergeant saw it and goes, "Hey, what happened?" I said, "Well, nothing. The dent's been here for probably 4 months. You could tell there's rust in the scratches and dust in the scratches. And the dent is obviously old." "Well, did you write it up on the damage form for the car?" "No, it's been here forever. It's already been written up." And then he goes, "Well, yeah, that's your responsibility. Come in later and I have a formal reprimand for not reporting damage to the squad car." And I was like, "Well, hold on for a second." But he was covering his butt because he didn't want to get blamed.
Mhm.
And that was a sergeant. He was supposed to be taking care of the people, but he also was trying to demonstrate, well, maybe one day I could be a lieutenant. So let me show that I could hold people accountable. And I was like, well, no, this is not the thing to hold a person accountable for. There's times and places. It's just being around people that when you look at them, you don't see that ethical based, principle based leadership. You see the I'm a leader because my badge says I'm a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, or a chief, or I'm a leader because I'm a city manager. Well, no, you're the manager. You're not the leader.
Yeah.
You may be the head of the organization or the department. So I saw a lot of people that were overly impressed by their title. And for me, title is important. It's nice, but it's not the most important thing. We all lose the title at one time. We all move on from it.
Yeah.
It's the type of person you are. That is what makes the leader. And I encountered wonderful, selfless leaders who would do anything for people but hold them accountable. And I encountered those leaders that if you did something that possibly made them look bad, they would throw you under a bus in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So it's learning how to deal with both of them and watching them and picking out the best from the best and the best from the worst and looking at those people going, I am never going to be like that person.
Yeah. It's kind of the whole idea of don't forget where you came from. But you know what? And you remind me of something that I do have to look up. This was something I heard in a university course, and it was on management. And they were talking about maybe you might know something about this, but they were talking about like the levels of leadership and kind of just your influence and power. And the lowest on that was positional authority. So just saying like, do this because I'm this rank. And the top of it was something to the effect of like, you're almost like a father figure and people do things for you, not because you directed them, but because if they don't do it or they don't do a good job, you will show that sense of disappointment, right? And that is far more powerful than just the positional authority. I got to find where that chart is though. It was actually really good.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen something very similar.
Yeah.
And that's where it goes down to is if you have to order people to do everything, well, then you're a failed leader. You should be able to go ask, hey, you know what? Can you do this for me? Or, hey, the department's having an issue here. We're going to have to address it. What can we do about it? And then you get the ideas from the guys and they do it because there's an issue. I like to say management is just getting the job done and making sure that the organization keeps on moving and the output is there. I mean, you can manage anything. I mean, cookie plants, your job is to make sure the cookies keep on rolling out. That's what your job is. That's management. Leadership is the ability to get people to do things willingly, even though they may not 100% agree with it.
Mhm.
But you're able to get them to do it willingly because you've expressed trust in them, you have put in a sense of purpose with them, and they want to do it because they see why it should be done. And a lot of places, you never get that final. They want to do it because they have that shared purpose. They want to do it because of the trust that's been built up in them through your interactions. So yeah, I mean, you have to be able to manage stuff because all organizations have a budget, they have a goal,
Mm.
and they have a purpose. But you only are able to be effective if you're also able to lead your people. And that's your subordinates, that is the people on your level, and also you lead people ahead of you through your work ethic, through your ability, and through what you stand for. The individuals that may be ahead of you will look at that, and in times they will look and go, you know what, this person, through their example, maybe I should step up my game. But you need to have that leadership pushing the management because that's the only way you're truly successful. And that becomes culture. And once you
Mm.
install a strong leadership culture in your organization is strong not only when you're in it, but after the point.
It kind of gets me thinking of the difference between manipulation versus motivation. And this is a conversation I wanted to get into when I had a prior guest, Oakland. He was really good at talking about some of these aspects. And I think of more the manipulation side is like if you're just management, you're just getting by and your people don't really want to listen to you and you lack the leadership side. Then you start doing things like, oh, I'm going to put you on this performance plan, like punitive type stuff. And you kind of just have like this one lever that you can use to try and get people to do stuff, but it's more manipulative. Whereas motivation would be kind of like you're showing those leadership characteristics, and you can say to people like, "Hey, we need to do these things for these reasons." Maybe you don't agree with it 100%, but you can see the bigger picture. You can get where we're trying to go with this. Everyone's going to have their different style, but we're going to try this style today or whatever it might be. So it's more on the motivation side. One thing too is I wanted to ask, where was your dad a chief of police? Was it in the same area?
It actually was for the same department. He was chief of police from Sausalito from 1981 to 1995. He actually retired May 1, 1995. And then I started as a reserve May, May 20. I'm looking up at my wallplex. Uh, I would say it was May 22nd, May 21st, 1996 is when I started. So a
Okay.
little bit after a year later, I started. So, and my uncle was a sergeant in the same organization.
Okay.
And he was there from 1965 until 1981. And my wife actually was a dispatcher for us.
Oh, really?
And when we shut down our dispatch station, and we went to a couple of different consolidated ones, she was there and she dispatched from my department from 1988 until her retirement from dispatching in 2021, or actually 2022.
Hmm.
So my family has over 113 years of law enforcement experience and well over 100 years of experience policing the same city.
Wow, that's very cool. I'm wondering, like, when so you rose through the ranks in the organization. Your father was there, your family there, and when you're going through it, do you catch any kind of flack, or do you hear people saying like, "Oh, this person's only getting ahead because their dad was the chief," or and how do you deal with things like that? And the reason I ask is because we have people on our job now, uh, the sons of white shirts and chiefs and all kinds of stuff. So, and I always wondered that, like, how do you kind of carve your own path? Because the name is there, but it's like, I'm my own person. So,
It,
how do you do that?
it's hard and it's always there. You have to acknowledge it right off the bat. You have to realize that there are going to be some people that are going to think that. And you have to prove them wrong. You have to prove that you're your own person. And you do that through your own work ethic and establishing yourself. When I was just starting out, they called me the baby administrator because we would be having conversations and I would say, well, you know what, this is kind of why we have this policy. And it was an unpopular policy, but because I had heard the reasons behind the policy, because everybody
Exactly.
knows that if you work at an agency long enough, there's a policy that has your name on it. Um, and because I was somebody young, kind of understanding the administrative role, they called me the baby administrator. And I actually think that because of my name, because I was in the same organization that my father was, that when it was time to punish me for missteps, I got punished harder because people wanted to show that they're not playing favorites on the former chief's son. And also, when I did things that were very good, I didn't get the accolades at times that other people would have because they didn't want to. Oh, look, this person's doing better. I remember I had one sergeant. We had an officer being violently assaulted by an individual later on who was on acid. And I pulled the person off the officer. I fought with this guy and eventually took about 7 us to get this person in custody. And it was before the additional 6 officers showed up. It was one of the biggest fights I'd ever seen, and it was one for the record book. So let's just say when this guy punched me, the baton that was in the loop on my belt went flying off, and my glasses went flying off somewhere else. So it's like, oh, okay, this guy's got a little strength. Well, after the fact, after we got this individual booked and everybody medically cleared, and they patched me up and they patched the other officer up, the sergeant said, "You know what? You did a great job. I really should put you in for accommodation." "Yeah, but you're too new." And then shut the door. And I was like, okay. Later on, I found out that he came from an outside agency and he wasn't a big fan of the current administration or the past administration. And I got a little, I took some, like I said, I got punished harder and I wasn't recognized as much. But through my work and showing that I was my own person, and showing that, hey, you know what, I'm out here to work. I'm not here just to go by the name. I made sure I was the most active officer on every shift I worked. I made sure that when I screwed up, I acknowledged I screwed up. I never dropped names. I never try to say, oh yeah, you know what, I know this person or any of that.
Yeah.
And over time, just through that work ethic, it got put away. Also, my dad made a conscious choice that when I came onto the job, he would purposely avoid the city. And he had lived in that city. He had worked in that city for 29 out of his 32 years. And then when I came on, he wanted to make sure that there was separation between the two of us. So he rarely in the next 27 years ever even came into the city. He only came into the city when I got promoted. He dropped by once or twice for lunch, and he did one ride along with me when I was a sergeant. But other than that, he ghosted that city like crazy because he didn't want people to think that he was there easing the way for me.
Yeah. That's good that he has that foresight and maybe the awareness, I should say, the awareness to think like that.
Yeah. So that helped. And this just over time, and I never denied that where I came from. I never denied my background. I was very proud of it. But I had to establish that if I came from a family of cops, I have to be a pretty active one to win these people over so they don't think that, oh, he only got it because of his name.
Yeah. So I'm kind of going to jump into closer to your retirement side here, and we'll talk about just being a leadership over the last few years, which have been insane in policing. So you retired in December of 2023, so only a few months ago, and your last position was as acting chief. I wanted to kind of get your views first on just policing in general. We can go to beginning of BLM, or we can talk about all the other incidents with George Floyd and Michael Brown. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's happened in the U.S. that I'm not even sure. Are most U.S. agencies even aware of like how much of an impact they have on policing outside of the U.S.? Because it's huge.
Unfortunately, law enforcement's greatest weakness is our lack of a grander perspective and a lack of a knowledge of our own history. So most cops do not take the time to study the job or realize the impact that what California law enforcement, as well as what law enforcement in the United States has on so many other agencies across the world. I would say that everybody says 2020 was the year that everything changed for law enforcement, but in reality, things started changing in 2014.
Yeah.
There was the Michael Brown, there was Martin. I can't think of his first name then. And then there were also scandals that came out. There were so many other issues. But that's when slowly things started changing. Certain states started passing propositions that reduced felonies to misdemeanors, that got rid of certain laws, that put state prisoners in local jails, released people from local jails, and which caused additional crime in the long run. So that's when things started really changing. And then 2020 was just the cherry on top that forced people through uh, what happened in Minnesota, Minneapolis. That was the flashpoint.
Yeah.
That was the, hey, what's going on here?
If I could jump in real quick too, because just talking about like some of the law enforcement side of things, I think a lot of what people don't realize is like as law enforcement, we can only do what we're legislated to do, what the policies say and what the laws say. So when you're talking about how all of a sudden laws are changing, we're releasing people, and so on and so forth, I find maybe the way to describe it is the politicians, the ones who set all the laws and direct what law enforcement is going to do in the land, they're the ones who said all that. So police were kind of going off in one direction, and that doesn't excuse individual behavior, or if there is anything that's systemic, that is definitely on the organization. But the person at the very top who's setting all those laws, we're going in that path. And I feel like a lot of those laws, when they changed it, and we saw the same thing up here, we have issues with bail reform, very weak sentencing. I find it was like almost a way to make amends or apologize or say, hey, we're super sorry, but we're still going to keep doing what we're doing over here, but go blame these people over here. It was a little bit of like sloughing off the blame, I think, onto law enforcement, because I don't think politicians have seen their day of reckoning when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
Oh, I agree. What you have is there are some very good politicians. There are some politicians that get in there to serve the public. And in many ways, that's the majority. But however, there is a huge number that are overly activists.
Yes.
That go in there in order to try to pass an agenda or push their own personal agenda. And they do things to try to get them reelected. They do things to try to make them seem more popular. They do things to stir up the game. Sorry for my cat in the background. She likes to weigh in at times. But they do things that are lightning rods to try to stir things up, to get them more money, to try to push their individual beliefs. And they'd make all these changes, but then they turn around and go, well, this is your fault, crime's increasing, or this, we have to change these because the police have been so bad. But they base so many on their decisions on misinformation, misconstrued statistics,
Yes.
lies, and they don't have any ramifications for the problems that they cause. Law enforcement has to deal with it. And mistakes have been made. There have been great law enforcement. There's been bad law enforcement. There's been wonderful people in law enforcement. There have been evil people in law enforcement. We're a representation of society.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority, I mean, probably 99.9999% of cops are good, clean cops that do the job, that are hard, that they don't have any evil bones in them. But then you have media and politicians that only show that horrific 0.0001%, and they paint the profession. And that's the hardest part when you try to lead people through a media storm, when you try to lead people through when everybody's turned against you, when laws are being changed and you don't understand why, or politicians change laws just to make themselves look more friendly to one culture or one area or the other. You start having not fair law enforcement and impartial law enforcement. You start having party law enforcement.
Yeah.
And you can only do this for these people. You can only do this for this people. Don't you dare do this for this. And it's like, how's that fair to anybody?
Yeah. I wonder too, when the politicians are doing a lot of this stuff and the pandering and the just trying to be populists, what do they exactly think is going to happen when they demonize police, when they demonize law enforcement in general, right from municipal level right through the federal side? Because who else is left to protect anything? Like if the police start depolicing, you have chaos. And then if they quit altogether, which we see in a lot of the services in the US, this hasn't been so bad up here. Like we have a recruiting retention issue, but in the US, it's like just on fire. Um, but then you see like entire sections of cities where police won't even go now. And it's like, well, what are they thinking is going to happen? And what's the solution? Because I can tell you, like, when you're just standing at the pulpit and just talking, there's people who don't like, they're not going to listen to you. You're not going to stop bad things from happening. So I don't know what the alternative is in their mind. But maybe you have more insight into what they're trying to get at.
They're trying to push their purpose. They're trying to push their agenda or what they believe. They don't realize that in order to have a free society, in order to have a safe society, you have to have people that hold people accountable, and that is the individuals that pass the laws.
Mhm.
The police department's job is to keep the public safe through the enforcement of those laws. And enforcement doesn't mean everybody gets arrested if they they commit a violation, or everybody gets cited, or everybody gets detained. It's holding people accountable through contacting them and taking the appropriate action. And that could be a warning, a citation, an arrest, or whatever the situation calls for. But it's doing it in a fair manner, that you're basing your decision on that incident itself, not on who the subject is, what race the subject is, what sex the subject is, what sex they claim they want to be or wish they were, or whatever.
Mhm.
And what happens is politicians muddy the water when it comes to that, saying we want enforcement, we want safety, but we also want the people to do whatever they want to do, or be free to do whatever they want to do. We can't. Everybody can't. You have to balance the line between security and freedom. And politicians live in a utopia of everything is wonderful.
Yeah.
In reality, everything isn't wonderful. And sometimes bad things happen to good people. Sometimes law enforcement have to use force to put a dangerous individual down to stop the threat. And sometimes the agendas that the politicians push is a complete falsehood, because they're claiming this has never happened and it did happen. Or this event is racially biased. No, it wasn't. Or this
Mhm.
was because of this. Because they're trying to win. They're trying to get money to push their election notes, and they're trying to change whatever part of society they want to change. But they're not looking on the greater good of the entire society or the entire community. And that's the hard thing, is when you separate a group of people and you separate an entire community into sub-communities, you make it a us versus them situation.
Yeah.
And once that happens, it creates nothing but chaos in a city.
Well, and you're talking there too about some of the themes that they go on. And I've had this discussion on here a few times where they say like a lot of the stats and then the headlines or the one-liners that the politicians will use, they're very superficial. So they'll say police are over policing in the black neighborhood. Like, but who calls us the most, right? Who has the most crime going on? So, and then on the flip side, when you release those people because of their race or gender or whatever it might be, where do you think they go? They go back to the community. They go back to mom. Most criminals go back to mom, no matter how much money they have. It always comes back to that. But so you're just putting them back in that community. Well, there's another call that they're going to put in, and who do you think I'm going to interact with? The chances of use of force are going up. The chances of harder uses of force are going up. The victimization in that community is higher, but they don't ever tell you any of the depth behind those stats. They just take these very superficial, um, just throwing fuel on a fire and just letting it go. And like, there's nothing, to tell the public, like, hey, our law enforcement are doing this because of these reasons. It's just our law enforcement is doing this. And then the conversation stops. So I find it, I've talked with a number of guests about this from different countries, like other side of the world, and everyone's got the same view on this. And yeah, I think what we need is more nuanced discussion. That's why we have podcasts, and get people away from like the Twitterverse or the clickbait type stuff, because that's just super dangerous. Um, as when you were in management, were you working in maybe I should ask, where were you working in management, and did you have any views of or direct command of any of the frontline people that were going through any of these kind of things? So even back to 2014.
2014, I was still a sergeant, and we had our sergeants are street sergeants. We didn't have any purely administrative sergeant positions. So,
Mm.
and going back to 2014, I had my own patrol team, and I was supervising that as we were beginning to see the changes. I remember just a small thing is you contact somebody, they have heroin on them, or they were under the influence of heroin. At one time, it was like, okay, they're going to jail for a felony. And then the next day, we're giving somebody who we just take a bag of heroin off of them. Oh, here's a citation. Make sure try to show up to court. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, what kind of initiative do you want to push to your officers when they're going? Well, this is only a ticket now. The laws don't think it's a big idea. And then when I promoted to lieutenant, I was originally the operations commander, so I was in charge of patrol and I was in charge of all our specialty units. For a period of time, I went to support services where I dealt with parking and kind of admin stuff. But then I went as a captain, I went back to operationals. And then as the acting chief, that was responsible for the entire department. So yeah, no, I had individuals that I was directly supervising, or they were under my division as we were going through this, and it was difficult to try to number one keep them apprised of all the new laws that are coming down and all the changes that were occurring.
Okay.
And then when everybody in the world is screaming, we hate cops, cops shouldn't make traffic stops, we don't want to, why do cops show up to suicidal people? That should be a psychiatrist. Why do cops have to arrest people? As that was coming down, I was trying to not only, you can never shelter your officers about that, but I was trying to keep them motivated by letting them know our community, even though on the greater scale, you hear all this negative stuff, but the community that we work in, they support us.
Okay.
Every once in a while, something may pop up and they may complain about something, or they may have a protest um, regarding something that's happening on the larger scale, but it's not anything against us. There
Yeah.
were some protests that were aimed against us by lunatics, but that's something else. But we had to remind them that. And it's like, you know what? Remember, when you do traffic enforcement, you reduce the amount of accidents that occur on the street. That reduces the amount of people that get hurt. When you make contact with somebody who's wandering through the park in the middle of the night that seems confused, you may be stopping somebody from hurting themselves. You may be stopping them from hurting somebody else.
Mhm.
You have to go out there and still be proactive because we make a difference. I got some lines from Commissioner Bill Bratton from New York that I used to repeat as much as possible. And that's cops count, police matter. And I try to continually push that is that we make a difference every day. You know what? That traffic stop you made may not seem like a big thing, but it might slow that person down so they don't cause an accident.
Yeah.
The individual that you contact and give advice to may be able to now soothe their teenage daughter that's going through some hard times. That person you arrest for that warrant is you might have stopped them from committing a grander crime that's violence against a spouse. So you got to go out there and make a difference every day. There was a time that cops were sheltering in place throughout the nation because nobody wants us to do anything. Well, that was an overreaction that was pushed by politicians, by the media, and also by, I hate to say, social media, because nowadays one thing that looks bad flies across the world before you could put out a memo that says, "Hey, this is good."
Yeah.
Um, so it was tough, and pendulum is swinging. There are getting some more support for law enforcement, but all that prior negative stuff is really impacting law enforcement, and it's really impacting how people feel about it. And that's where the recruitment and retention comes in.
Yeah. Well, maybe on that, I'll kind of switch gears a little bit, and we'll talk more about the leadership side and how you develop that. The one of the things I always see is the comparison between military law enforcement. Here in Edmonton, we have big military base around the north side, and so we have a lot of guys jump over from the military to law enforcement. And they've talked about their, I guess in Canadian military, I imagine the Americans have the same kind of system. Um, they have like mentorship programs. They have leadership development. It's kind of built into the culture. In policing, what I usually see is you get like these one-off courses that are, hey, leadership in policing, and come take this 1 day course, and it might tell you how to talk to people and like some really basic things. But if you're not using it, you're losing it. And if you're not in those roles, it's like, are you getting the experience that you need? So, what have you seen out there for mentorship programs, leadership development? How does this stuff work, and how can we make it effective at developing good leaders?
Well, Commissioner Charles Ramsey told me when I was doing my master's thesis that turned into my book that the greatest weakness we have in law enforcement today is we don't mentor people.
Yeah.
We don't have any formal programs. We pick leaders by chance, not by choice. And you have to, and then he goes, look at the US military. They find people with skills and they develop them. How do you think people like Powell and Petraeus get to positions? They're identified early and groomed. That in law enforcement, we're so concerned about the crisis of the moment, the big ticket issue that's happening from large to small scale, from huge events that are influencing law enforcement to the city council complaining about the budget and how it should be less. And we're so focused on what's going on day in to day out, we don't think of how we need to develop people or what we need to do. It's just by doing the job, you get exposed to stuff, which, yes, you get exposed to stuff, but you don't always get exposed to the correct stuff.
Yeah.
So we need to really focus in on developing formal mentorship and informal mentorship programs in your organization to the point where mentoring is just part of your organization's culture. That your organization takes the time to prepare people, that people know that everyone in your organization should consider them a mentor to help prepare themselves and prepare other people to be the best they can be. Not everybody wants to be chief. Not everybody wants to be sergeant. Not everybody wants to be in leadership positions. However, our programs should be focused on mentoring people and so they can be developed to be the best they can be. And that is through everyday contact
Okay.
from senior officers to sergeants to command staff to the chief. That is through sending people to the proper training, sending to people to the proper conferences, getting them to expose to different aspects of law enforcement, putting people into positions that they never thought they would be in, challenging them, giving them a little bit difficult assignments, being there to help them with there, but letting them kind of push the way, letting them run some programs, giving them different bits and pieces of the total job of law enforcement. Too often in law enforcement, people just separate. Well, you're either patrol or you're not.
Hmm.
People used to say you're either SWAT or you're not. Like one side is better than the other.
Well, and now we see you're either operational or you're not, right? Like you discredit
Yeah,
one
exactly.
side, their experience. Yeah.
And I hate to say it, I used to say this all the time at department meetings and talking to the city council is that the people wearing the navy blue uniforms, which typical are sworn officers, the navy blue uniforms get all the praise. And everybody forgets about the baby blue or the white uniforms for us, which were administrative aides or parking enforcement, dispatch, stuff like that. Well, you know what? 99% of the day-to-day things that are getting done that makes this department run are being done by the professional staff.
Hmm.
So we got to make sure we recognize the importance of them, the importance of the operational side, the importance of all the different every unit in that operations, because we all play important roles.
Someone once told us up here, it was something like for every patrol officer, there was, they said it was 7 people behind the scenes to make that one patrol officer operational, to make them functional, right? When you think of like, I got to have the IT person that sets everything up in your car and your computer so you type your reports. You got a dispatcher, you got someone to look all your queries up, and like there's so many people behind the scenes to make one person functional to go out and do that forward-facing job. And as you're kind of describing that, it kind of gets me thinking, like, uh, is there a branch or maybe a unit you could create within a police service, and their sole job is to look throughout the organization? In Edmonton Police, we have just shy of 2,000 police officers. So could have a unit that just kind of looks through, talks to people, looks at performance reviews, whatever it might be, and try to identify those high flyers early and say, "Hey, I notice you like doing these specific things. Your passion is over here. You're getting high marks on these qualities, and can we pick people out of that ahead of time?" And it also gets me thinking, like, I'm in the promotion process right now here, and you write a test and then you go for an interview, and out of that they're going to pick some people to get promoted. And I always wonder what's going on behind the scenes, right? Like, how do they actually pick the person? I know everybody's got their personal relationships with some people in those decision making positions, but have they actually identified people ahead of time in any way? I don't know, but it actually sounds like a very cool idea if you could create a unit to go out and proactively, almost headhunting, right? I
Mhm.
guess it would come down to being similar to that.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and if you have the proper personnel and you have the proper recruitment, and your department's fully staffed, you could create something like that, and that would be wonderful. However, what I like to say is there's an unofficial unit that is doing that, that should be doing that in every organization right now. That is your sergeants. They should be the ones looking at the people on their patrol teams, going, this person's got some skills, this person's got some abilities.
Yep.
Then they should be telling that to the next level, so the lieutenants and the captains could have an understanding, so they can start looking at these people going, hey, you know what, let's give them this, let's do this for them, and let's start engaging them in some conversation. So in reality, if you have a properly run supervisor and command core, they should be that unit identifying the future, because that's their job, is to prepare people to take their jobs. Unfortunately, like I said, we get caught up in the chaos of the moment, which screws everything up. But you want to build your culture through mentoring and providing professional education throughout your department, so that you start seeing the stars as they move up. You start seeing the people that have certain skills, and you have to make sure that you empower your sergeant crew to be able to identify these people. Too often, people think the sergeant's job is just to sign off on reports and grant overtime and give a
Mhm.
person a day off there. No, your job is to mentor, train, develop, prepare. The easiest part of your job is sometimes doing the street work. So, yeah, in a perfect world, we have that unit that studies everything and prepares everything. And I think that would be spectacular. And some NYPD, they're such a huge organization, they might have something like that. Um, Edmonton, big enough organization, they possibly could do something like that. But every organization should have that informal group that is their supervisors preparing the next generation. Because we talked about mentorship, and that's key. You have to be there to help people, develop them, teach them. You have to let them know the importance of being a mentor and being a mentoree. But then the organization also has to care for the officer's education, getting them to the right training, getting them to the right conferences, getting them the right experiences, getting them opportunities for some non-professional education, such as going back to school, getting some other signing contracts and deals with online universities to help give opportunities for more formal education, so that they could see that side. Because as you move up the ranks, there's a lot of writing, and you better be a good writer.
Mhm.
You have to be able to understand different perspectives. You have to understand why one group says a certain thing, and as a cop, you're going, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." But you have to go, "Well, I got to understand where they're coming from." You learn a lot of that as you go through educational processes through universities or schools. But then also, you have to encourage informal education. You have to encourage your officers and everybody in your department to be a lifelong learner. They have to be people that are reading
Yes.
books, newspapers, periodicals, seeing what's going on in the world, studying stuff. Because when you get as a leader, be it a senior officer, as a sergeant, lieutenant, up to chief, may have somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, this is what's going on in this part of the world. What do you think about it?" And if you go, "I don't care, that doesn't affect me," they're going to go, "Well, this guy's an idiot. This guy doesn't how could I expect this person to lead a department when he doesn't know what's happening?" But when you can say, "Well, you know what? Yeah, that's kind of crazy, and it could be being caused by this." And traditionally, this has been the reply. You have just some talking points. Those people will look at you and go, "Hey, this person's squared away." It's kind of like they say the first line of officer safety is that the officer's presence. Same thing when it comes to identifying leadership is your impression of somebody. If somebody looks like a slug and acts like a slug and talks like a slug, odds are they're a slug.
Yeah.
But if somebody's able to explain themselves, to properly communicate, be able to demonstrate the knowledge and demonstrate their professional, their formal and informal education and training, other people look at them and go, "This person's squared away. What else can they do?" And you want to be one of those people that individuals go, "Hey, he or she, that person's squared away. Let's see what else they could do."
Yeah. No, I think those are all very good points. So maybe that kind of leads into talking about your book and some of the stuff that you're doing now. So with the consulting. So can you tell us a little bit about the book, how this came to be, and we'll kind of take it from there. But yeah, how did you get into authoring a book?
Well, it all started when I was preparing for promotion. And like I said earlier, I was running across a bunch of management and a bunch of supervision books, but not anything really good about police leadership. So as I was doing that, I got, I need to start studying. I want to study more about leadership. So I started reading more out of police leadership stuff from the business world, from the corporate world, but also heavily from the military.
Hmm.
And I was reading a couple books at one time by Edwin Pruer, who was a big military historian. And what he did was for the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. He had talked to numerous 3-star and 4-star generals and admirals and said, "Tell me, what are the traits of leadership that somebody needs to be a successful leader?" And he incorporated all that information and he put it out in books. And I'm reading it going, this would be great for law enforcement because really, I have never seen something like this. So I decided, you know what, let me do this as my master's thesis is let me put out a bunch of information to a bunch of successful police chiefs, sheriffs, commissioners, and get their perspectives and then study a bunch of other historical law enforcement leaders and get their perspectives on what are key traits for leadership. And then I wrote it. I got very high reviews from certain academic things. And I'm going, this might be something that law enforcement may find useful. Because once I decided to write the book, I didn't write the book to make any money. I wrote the book to help the job because I still love the job. And I put it out to law enforcement leaders. I put it out to military leaders, and they have found it to be quite useful and quite down to earth because it explains what are 10 key leadership traits that you must have to be a leader, how you could develop those in yourselves, but also what you could do to develop those leadership traits in your future leaders, what you could do not only as a person, but as an organization. And we talk about key things as selflessness, mentorship,
Mm.
decision making, fairness,
Yeah.
education. We talk about your presence as a leader. We talk about team building, communication. We cover those key points and we discuss, tell me, what can we do? What can we do? And it just opens up the idea because you need to be a selfless leader. You have to put yourself second. You got to make sure you take care of other people's needs. You got to make sure that you're preparing yourself and we're preparing others by giving them opportunities. You have to be that mentor. You have to team build people. You have to be able to go, you know what? You have to have the strength to challenge. And that's you go, something's wrong here. We got to stand up for it. If it, you got to know when and where to challenge and make sure you pick the right battles to fight. But you have to have all these ingrained traits. And too often we don't talk about them or we don't do anything to help develop them. We just go, oh, they have it or they don't have it.
Yeah.
Well, they might have a little bit because there's two different schools of thought. They say leaders are born, others are leaders are made. Well, the most successful or leaders are born with certain traits that have to be continued to develop and trained and developed.
The balance.
And yeah, it's that balance. You got to find that balance. And my book goes into once again saying it's not, this is information that it's not the things because I'm so great or I'm so wonderful. It's because listens from these people's successes and their failures. Look at the history of law enforcement. Know when you accept the blame for something one of your people did because they went about it with good hearted attempts, but maybe you should have done something to reel them in.
Mhm.
They made a mistake. Hey, it's my fault. I'm the command here. Or knowing when to go, hey, boss, this is wrong. Me and my last chief, who, when he went out on his medical leave, I took over. We met for coffee the other day. And we get along great, no problems at all. But there were many times I would close the door behind and go, boss, no, this is not right. I was doing my job as a number two. And we would talk about it. And there was never, when the final roll came down, I was supported it as my own, even if I didn't agree with it 100%. But once the decision is made, you've got to still push forward. But you have to have that ability to say, you know what, this ain't right.
I think that's one of the things that I've come up the most against. I work in org crime branch here, and so it's very political, and there's a lot of stuff like you're very close to even chief's level. Um, the thing that I've seen that surprised me the most going from patrol, where it's like, yeah, you see a bit of the politics and you get some orders directed down to you, and you're like, oh, that sounds kind of stupid. I don't think that's going to work, but whatever, they're saying to do it. But once you get like into any of these specialized areas, even talking to peers, you're like, man, the level, the layers between me and the one issuing the order, there's so many middle people, and you can tell like they're not getting the message at the top, and the things that are coming down are not matching the issues we have to deal with here. So it's like, where's the disconnect? A lot of the time, you get yes men or women in the middle. You get people who don't do that pushback. I think that's one of the biggest issues that I've seen. And I've worked for two different organizations with the RCMP before going to Edmonton Police, and I've seen it there too. You just get the management in the middle who's just like, yes, sir, no, sir, not rocking the boat. I'm just waiting till I'm eligible for the next promotion, or I want to go to this area. I'm a title collector, whatever it might be. It's like, but when you get those bosses who actually do push back and actually, this isn't like saying you have to push back in a mean way. It's not confrontational, but it's someone who is either they're educated about the position, they're confident in their skills, they're confident in their people, and they know like, hey, I'm good with where I'm at. I can talk to the person above me and I can talk to the person below me. So I've always found the issue is kind of the middle management. Maybe if I ever get promoted and I start moving up, I'll see what's happening at the very, very top. But right now it's like, man, the telephone game just ruins it for so many things. Trying, like you said earlier, police are always chasing the latest crisis. It's like, how do you get ahead? Well, we need people who are competent in their job, comfortable in that, and I think exhibit like all the characteristics that you're talking about there, the traits, and then maybe we can kind of get ahead of some things, right? Developing people, being better police, whether that's through intelligence or developing whatever we need. Because a lot of it feels like we're always playing catch up, and it's because of the lack of leadership at all different levels. So that's kind of my take on it.
And I think you're right there. What happens often is leadership comes down with a plan, and it could probably be a great plan, but somewheres along the way, it gets filtered down. So it's important for the leader of the organization to actually make sure their message gets to everybody by bringing it to everybody.
Mhm.
Don't just allow your middle management to push out the information. You start pushing out the information. Chief emailed everybody saying, "Hey, we're going in this direction." Chief then walks down and talks to each operational brief and say, "Hey, you know what? This is what we're got going on." The chief reaches out and has those casual hallway conversations with the officers they purposely accidentally bump into
Mhm.
in the downstairs or in the hallways, or go into the lunchroom, go into the cafeteria and just go, "Hey, let's go have casual conversations." And then that's where you bring your philosophy up. Also, as you're doing that, you also have to remember that cops hate change. I remember one officer says, "This is wrong. We can't do it anymore, but just don't change anything." Well, what do you mean? You got to embrace that change as a leader and as an officer. So you got to push that, and you have to push that belief. And that's the leader's job. Is if they're communicating, you have to continue to put that out. As you're doing that, you're building up these teams. But you have to encourage that respectful feedback. You have to encourage to say, "You know what, tell me if I'm right or wrong, tell me. But tell me in the right manner and in the right place." You know what? Yes, you gotta change, but let's do change for change good purposes, not change for change's sake.
Mhm.
And let's bring communication out. I hate emails. Emails are the worst way to put information out, but sometimes, depending on the size of the organization, you have to. So that's when you put out your email as the department head, and then you go out and you try to touch as many hands as possible. You tell your command staff, "This is exactly what my mission is. This is what our plan is. I want you going out there and touching hands." You tell that to your top commanders, who tells them to their lower level commanders, and you make sure you control that narrative. Too often, people don't control the narrative. They
Yes.
don't want to go out there. It's like, you don't want to be one of the chiefs in my book mentions that there was a time during a briefing the chief walked in and one of the senior officers goes, "Oh my God, he actually looks like the picture on the wall." And he meant that this chief was never seen. And you can't have that. You got to make sure you're interacting with people. You're not hiding in your office. You're doing all these things that you are purposely showing you're still there. It goes back to presence. And one of the things I always push is, you've probably noticed this too, as law enforcement leaders go up in rank, they stop wearing the uniform. They start wearing suits. They start wearing coats. They start wearing casual wear. And sometimes they start disassociating themselves with the line officers because of their rank. Well, you walk across the street to the fire department. Yeah, the chief of the fire department, there's a car that catches on fire. They throw on their turnouts, they put on their hat, they do all these things. It's like, well, you're not going to fight the fire. You're not going to come 20 minutes. You're going to show up and like kind of hang out, but they still wear their uniform every day. Because they still want to show their part of the line. They're still part of the organization. They're still the basic. And too often we get away from that. You have to show the people that you're responsible for and the people that you're leading that you're still one of them. You might hold a different title. You might have different responsibilities. But when it all comes down, we're still cops. And too often get that because he's the chief. Yeah. I remember I used to tell people, they just call me Bill. "Hey, Cap, hey, Lieutenant," or whatever. Just call me Bill. When we're out in the field and it's an emergency situation, then it's official. We're down here on the station. It's just first name. I was successful with everybody except one parking enforcement officer, and God bless her, that would always to this day, she still addresses me by title. And that's out of respect and just how she grew, and it's great. But you got to have that because we all have different roles. We have to respect each other. And everybody's role is different, but everybody's role is important. And too often people look and go, "Oh, they're only an officer." They'll say, "I'm only an officer." Well, hold on for a second. You go to 99% of the calls. Your actions are what people see. You're the most important person in this organization. Or they don't embrace it. You have to embrace your role. You have to embrace this importance of each role. Then you also have to realize is when you're in that uniform and you're in any of these positions, people from within your organization and outside of your organization look at you as the example of your organization.
Hmm.
So you want to show that you're doing the best you can every single time, because otherwise you're letting yourself down and the organization down.
Yeah. Man, I think that you got a lot of good points in there, and I've kept you over time, so I apologize. Ran a little bit late. Um, so we're just kind of at the end here. I want to make sure you get time to just say, how can people find you, find your work? I imagine the book is on Amazon. I have to pick up a copy because I got to read it. And but where would you like people to connect with you?
I am very active on LinkedIn. So please, people, if you want to go onto LinkedIn, follow me, connect with me. I try to I try to give the good and the bad. And that's what I try to do. Law enforcement isn't always perfect. And if it's not perfect, I'll say it out.
Hmm.
When law enforcement's doing a good job and some people aren't exactly saying that, I'm going to call that out too. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Sometimes these things happen and we're good. But I encourage people to think critically about the job. So follow me on LinkedIn. I am a consultant in law enforcement. I focus on training and management of police practices. I'm also available to assist the business world. If you go to my website, which is www.code33consulting.com, you'll see all the things we offer, and me and my partner, who's a retired NYPD captain, can provide. As well, I have some other associates from U.S. military and fire background that are available as well to assist. But also, you have links. You could order my book from my website. The book has been endorsed by people such as General Petraeus, U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sun, Sergeant First Class Matt Eversman, most famous for his role in Somalia in the Black Hawk Down incident, San Francisco PD retired deputy chief, Jim Dudley, who hosts a Police One podcast, a Medal of Honor recipient from the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
Sammy Davis.
I was looking at the website. Yeah, it was pretty good, the people that you have on there.
And there are more coming as well. So it's great to check out. If you're preparing for promotion, I can't see it. I'm not trying not to boast here. It's probably one of the best things you could read to prepare yourself for the next step. If you're looking from taking the jump from sergeant to lieutenant of command, it's invaluable knowing what these people are. You got words from Bill Bratton, John Timoney, Charles Ramsey, as well as small town police chiefs that give their work into this. So those are the best places to follow me. Instagram, I'm on as well as Facebook. So please reach out. I'm happy to help. I'm there for police officers. I'm there for support staff, the business world. I'm there for law enforcement organizations. Their leadership is key. We got to make sure that we put that as priority in law enforcement. Law enforcement profession is the best profession in the world. There has been mistakes. We have screwed up. There have been bad people in it, but the vast majority of the people are great. It's a wonderful mission. We got to keep pushing it forward. We got to fight the false narratives, and we got to do this as a team. And we need strong leadership now more than ever. And you look at assaults against officers are on the increase. The severity of those assaults are on the increase. Politicians that are making senseless attacks. We need leaders now more than ever to say what's right, to say what's wrong, to stand up against the false narrative, and to push our officers to the next generation and prepare those officers.
Well, and speaking of teamwork, I'll remind everybody to like, comment, share the book, pick up a copy, read it, improve yourself, right? And then when you're good where you're at, pass it on, share it down the line. So, and if you can also share or connect on LinkedIn and through these different platforms, reach out to Will if you have any questions. We're just trying to make this profession better, more professional, and help each other out. So, thanks for coming on today, Will, and hang on the line for 2 seconds.
You got it. Thank you for having me.